This is an edited recording of a live Global Makers Zoom event. It was held on September 9th, 2024, hosted by Sacramento City College Global Studies Program and Makerspace, and the Solar Education Project. The Zoom runs just under 1 hour.
Welcome, everyone, on behalf of Sacramento City College Global Studies Program and the Makerspace, along with our partners in the Solar Education Project. We're really happy to be here. Just a reminder to please turn off your audio unless you're speaking. And you are encouraged to participate throughout by raising your hand to ask questions or putting your questions or comments in the chat. And we ask you to kind of keep them brief because I know a lot of people have questions of Ivan and his students, our featured guests today. And if you add your questions or comments in the chat, one of the hosts will read them. We're recording the Zoom, so the recording will be available afterwards. And before we kind of dive in and introduce Ivan Yaholnitsky and his students in Lesotho, I wanted to also acknowledge that we have two classes. We have Ivan and his students in Lesotho, and we have a physics class at Sacramento City College taught by Professor Nanan Gassam and his students attending today too, and their classes on heat, light, and waves. So it's exactly up our alley in terms of solar cooking. So I wanted to introduce Nana students to Ivan students directly. I hope you can see each other, and also encourage you and will facilitate afterwards to be in direct contact with each other as your course of study continues. Um, we are really fortunate at Sac City College to partner with the Solar Education Project. Mary Buchenik, Jennifer Gasser, and Grace Chepkemik here with the Solar Education Project. I'm going to hand it over to them to say a little bit about the Solar Education Project and their work for those of you who don't know. Actually, a lot of you do know about them. We have people from all over the world who've worked with them in the past, but some of you don't. So Mary, Jennifer, and Grace, if you could say a few words and introduce our featured guests today.
Welcome, everyone. It's so exciting to see all of you today, and particularly the youth. And I love seeing the classrooms, and I hope you all have that ability to introduce yourselves to each other. I think I saw Ralph and a couple other. Raise your hand if you have youth with you. There you go. Morning, Ralph. It's exciting to know that we are actually speaking to the youth. There's so much knowledge and experience in this Zoom today. We want to have a special thanks to the previous makers, and if you can wave, or and the ones that are coming up, just give a little wave or put your hand up. We want to acknowledge you. We're a pretty friendly group, and Mary Buchenik, our partner here, Grace Chepkemik Rono, where are you, Grace? Wave. And I are the self-proclaimed Solar Sisters. We are proud advocates and educators, and we believe in youth. The Solar Education Project offers a full and scalable curriculum for those of you out there who might be interested. And we start local by promoting library lending programs. And can you imagine what opportunity it would be for every community to have a library that has solar cookers in the library for lending? What the teachers could do with that, the unimaginable lessons, and being able to cook for free and take the cost of solar cooking out of it for the teachers. They could borrow solar ovens, and they could do fabulous STEM education and show us a more sustainable way to live. And who doesn't live like a lesson that ends with eating food? That's my favorite. That's one of my reasons I solar cook. The Makerspace series is a special partnership, and we all recognize the importance of sharing our knowledge, and that is what we're doing here today. We all have a shared vision, and we involve people from across the globe in clean cooking practices. To the youth, I have a message. There's no pressure here, but the future really does depend on you. Our next generation of global citizens. You're not only the leaders of tomorrow, you're great influencers of today. So please use your organizations, your social media, your contacts, your other platforms, and share what you learned today so that you can educate other people. And we welcome you to join our efforts, and please stay in contact with any one of us. Now let's welcome Mary to introduce our friend and featured guest.
Yay. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I'm excited to be able to introduce him. I met Ivan in 2015 virtually through a curriculum working group that we were involved with from Solar Cookers International. And I was so impressed with him. He was operating with the philosophy that, yes, we need book learning, but our students need to learn by doing. And I think that there's probably no better example of that than the evolution of the school itself. So Bethel Business and Community Development Center opened in 1993 on a piece of barren land. And for decades, Ivan has worked to transform both the school and the land surrounding it into something that is vibrant and filled with hope and promise. And the technical school has grown and expanded, and the once barren land has been regenerated. Over the years, Ivan's students have witnessed this transformation, but better yet, they have participated in it. As I said, learning by doing. So with the curriculum Ivan developed for the technical school, students learn skills that build self-reliance, create well-being. Skills such as drafting, carpentry, welding, stonemasonry, computer literacy, water conservation, sustainable agriculture, permaculture, and of course, solar thermal cooking, which is what brings us here today. We're going to share a short version of the Global Maker video that we made with Ivan, and then we'll begin what I'm sure is going to be a fascinating and informative conversation with him and his students. So Riyadh, if you'd like to start the video.
Yeah, I'll do that. While I'm doing that, I want to just point out to the students at Sac City that as you see the video of how Ivan and his students construct their oven, you should think about if you're interested in our solar cooker design challenge that's going to happen in the makerspace this coming year. So keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to play the short 3-minute video, and then we'll come back to our discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan Yaholnitsky. I'm the principal of the technical school in Lesotho called Bethel Business and Community Development Center. What we're going to do for the Global Maker program is show you how we're building these small cookers using an evacuated glass tube, and just a few conventional practices from box cookers as they've been used over the last 50 years or so. So these are my students. It's Solar 2B. We're at the Solar Lab. We have a large PV array here, 16.5 kilowatt, and it's a place where we're working with solar energy. So the heart of this device now is this evacuated glass tube in the hands of one of my students. That cutoff piece, and we glue it on as Great. Now we're putting in some wood screws into the body, which is a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood, and that's just holding it all nice and firm all around. Solar 2B, we're running a trial for baking bread this morning. Lovely. Tubes. I came to Lesotho in July 1987, and frankly, solar cooking has saved my life. We have an old box cooker.
And special thanks to Mary for editing that video. We have a lot of questions. I've been kind of really interested in following the social media buzz around this event and the fact that people have had a million questions for Ivan. But I'll start us off while people are kind of pulling their questions together, and then we're gonna also encourage the students if they have some questions after I ask a few questions, and then we'll be able to dive in with everyone's questions. First of all, Ivan, welcome. And I'm curious, and maybe others are as well, how this whole journey started that led you to both Lesotho and solar cooking. Can you tell us a little bit about the Bethel Business Community Development Center, your own personal interest in that work, and also how it led to solar cookers?
I came to Lesotho in July 1987 as a high school teacher. And I don't know, the first year I was here, we had a monsoon and it was raining and raining and raining. And then I wasn't really aware of the kind of severe weather conditions we could get in Africa. We were blindsided by this terrible drought. Sometimes you can get 200 clear days with not a cloud on the sky. And a German colleague gave me the plans for a U-log solar cooker that some of you might be familiar with. So we made this little stationary solar cooker out of a piece of glass and some mud and rocks, actually, against the side of a classroom, and it worked. You know, it was really surprising. In summer, I didn't know the physics at that time. Uh, I know some of you now are professional teachers in physics, and at that time I didn't know the physics, but a chemistry professor told me that you needed a quarter square meter of glass to get enough energy into the solar cooker. So we went back and built a cooker that could tilt and swivel, and that really worked like a charm. In those days we had no internet, but there was some information bouncing around, and the solar cooker really saved my life because I liked working, but I didn't have time to cook. So, and it's interesting in itself, solar cooking. I see all these passionate people here that I've met, Celestino and so many others here that are really passionate about solar cooking, and it's just something once it gets under your skin that it's something you don't want to give up, and it's such an enormous time saver, for someone who's busy. You put something together, put it in the oven, and really a few hours.
The audio is breaking up a little bit.
That needed to be muted.
Hello?
Okay, go ahead, Riyad. I also wanted just to say thank you very much to Jennifer and Mary and Sacramento City College for getting all this together. I know it was a terrific amount of work, and I just want to thank you for that opportunity.
You're very welcome, and we thank you for your work too and your innovation. And speaking of which, I actually do have a question about the design of the oven, because I know these evacuated tubes, they get really hot on their own without being in a box. So I'm curious what made you think of putting it in a box in the design that you have, and what benefit that does in terms of the science of it and the function of the oven.
Well, it was just a hunch of mine. There was a few reasons to do it. As you know, concentrators or they suffer from advective losses, and also one of your guests here talked a lot about them breaking. So the cover glass was just an extra level of protection, so that the oven would have better be more resilient to bumps and bruises that you might get, moving inside and outside.
Yeah, I'm always reading about a tube imploding or exploding, and honestly, that's what keeps me from using mine. That the fear of it imploding. So putting it in a box the way you do, does that reduce the risk of implosion, or does it just make it safer when it does implode?
I think it makes it safer, and the additional layer of glass is giving you a higher ultimate temperature because you're reducing the advective losses on the evacuated tube.
And how hot does that oven get?
Well, it does get up to 200. I mean, you can see nice caramelization on a good day on bread or cakes or anything like that. So, you're well above 180 degrees.
Okay. And for those in the United States, you're talking Celsius. So 200 Celsius
Exactly.
would be, is that 450?
Close to 400. Yes.
Close to 400, which is pretty hot. I'm curious, so your students produce these ovens, do they produce them for the community, for sale or for distribution?
Yes, in small numbers. The story of this is that our Chinese supplier of solar water heaters sent us a few several years ago, and we tried them out, and they looked promising. So then we got 10, and then after that we ordered 100, and we make them as orders trickle in. We've never had the opportunity or the scope to set up a small factory, but that's probably in the offing down the road.
Okay. I have one more question and then we'll open it up to the students and the broader attendees. And that question is about kind of cultural acceptance of the technology of solar cooking. So the students who are with you are exposed to it in their school and in their production of it. Do they go on to cook with these ovens? Do their families adopt them? Are people reluctant at first? And if they are, what's been the sort of level of adoption of solar cooking in the community where you're at in Lesotho?
Well, we've got a big box cooker sitting on caster wheels in front of our office. And for whatever reason, the students like cooking beans in jars. So on any given clear day, that box cooker is filled with several jars of beans, a 750 ml jar with the lid put on tight. And those beans are just sitting there all day, cooking slowly. And by late afternoon, everybody goes home with their quart of well cooked beans, which
Wow.
are very energy intensive, by the way, to cook if you have to buy fuel or paraffin or kerosene, which is the local case here.
So people soak the beans and bring them to school with them and put them in the cooker and go home with cooked beans.
Exactly.
That's great. And is that in the tubi or in a different kind of cooker?
Well, it's in a box cooker. I was going to say, we've got concentrators, we've got box cookers, we've got the evacuated glass tubes. For us aficionados, I suppose all of them are useful under certain conditions. A box cooker can take a bit of cloud and still work well, or really windy, gusty days. Whereas a concentrator works ideally when you have very clear skies and no wind. So, the technology sometimes needs to match the weather conditions to optimize it. I see Sharon Clausen here also, experimenting with so many different types of solar cookers, and they all have their applications.
Mm-hmm. Depending on the level of sun and maybe the latitude and the time of year, right?
Exactly.
Nana, do any of your students have any questions or comments for Ivan or his students?
I have a couple of students here with questions. Who want to start? Yeah, go ahead.
Just wondering, I think you already addressed it, but what's the differentiation when you're in a colder climate or during a rainy season of some sort?
Can you repeat the question? What's the differentiation?
What's the differentiation when you are in a colder climate, or if you were during the raining season? How does it, how effective it is? I mean, I think compared to during the sunny season.
Great question. So there are two different variables. One is colder and the other one is rainy and presumably cloudy.
Yeah.
Ivan, what difference do those two variables make?
Well, I guess if you're in a rainy season, you're going to be wanting to use some sort of biomass cooking, obviously. We've got several biogas digesters here on the campus. they work perfectly well. As well, PV powered induction cooking is also something which we do here. It's efficient, it works. It's a good match for this type of thermal technology.
Thank you. Musa, then Elena.
I wanted to ask, how much does it cost you guys to produce one of those cookers?
Good question. How much does it cost to produce a cooker like that?
Well, actually about $50. Not much more than, no, just wait a minute. About $100 US.
Okay. And that's speaking of the evacuated tube cooker, right? Because you've got to source those. They're not produced anywhere but China.
Exactly. So far as I know.
Hmm. So some of the simpler cooker designs can be produced much more cheaply.
Yes, absolutely. Just with 3 mm clear window glass.
Okay. Cool. Before we go to the next question, the previous question asked about cold. I've seen people cooking with snow around the cooker. As long as the sun is out, you can solar cook. It doesn't matter if the ambient temperature is cold. If your cooker has a good ability to capture the sun's rays and keep the heat in.
Elena, I have a bunch of
I have a
questions.
question.
Okay, go.
Have you tested it with different latitudes, like 66 degrees and such, further north or south? And what's the effect of the sun on the sun's angle and the?
Great question.
Good question about different latitudes and the sun's angle. What difference does it make? Has it been tested, the technology in general?
Well, here at 32 degrees, we can use the solar cooker year round. Again, you have a morning, very low sun angle, no matter what. You have an altitude angle and an azimuth angle. So the technology needs to be flexible to basically align with the sun on either axis. So if that's built into the solar cooker design, which in this case it is, because it's very easily made to tilt and swivel or rotate on a table, so you have direct radiation.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So moving the tilt of the cooker itself addresses the question of the angle of the sunlight.
Exactly. When we teach solar technology here, I always talk about shadows. You can see the shadow on the edge of the solar cooker. That's telling you whether the sun rays are perfectly normal or not.
Right. And you mentioned it as well, that's the issue not just related to location, but time of day.
Yes.
One more question from your class, Nana, and then we'll see. Maybe Mary and Jennifer can help with the chat questions too.
Okay.
Mhm.
Jacob,
So it's like two-part.
a little louder.
What equation did you use for the parabola? And did you ever calculate how much power on average the solar cooker takes from the sun?
Okay. Did you hear those questions, Ivan?
Yeah, I think it's just y is equal to x squared divided by 20 for this little concentrator that we do. I did learn the physics later, so when we're teaching, we always go through how many watts are converted to joules to raise the temperature of, say, a 2 kilogram chicken, So you get it with a quarter square meter of glass, you're getting plenty of radiation to reach boiling temperatures or cooking temperatures.
Great, thank you. And then you had a second part of the question?
The first part.
The second part.
Oh yeah, he addressed both parts. He was
Addressed both parts. Okay.
the power and the equation for the parabola.
Excellent. These are great questions. There's a question in the chat as well that comes up a lot. How do you regulate the temperature?
Well, generally, it never gets too hot. I suppose if something was too hot, you would just simply reduce the angle of incidence. If you had a situation where it's so blistering hot. I mean, we've got concentrators which we use for baking bread, which are at a 10-to-1 concentration ratio. And they work beautifully. I mean, they can bake bread quickly, 30, 35, 40 minutes, under ideal conditions. You learn that you can run your cycles faster, just not leave it in as long.
So with use, you learn how to use these cookers, right? You check on your food, you compare the last time you burnt something, right?
Exactly.
For Sac City students last year on Earth Day, I burnt some muffins in the solar cooker. So I learned that I put them in a bit too long. Are there other questions that people have or comments?
Riyadh, Louise Meyer has a question.
Louise Meyer in Washington, D.C. I was trained by Ulrich Oehler also back in the era of 87, even before. My first box cooker was an Oolog. Is the box cooker that you mentioned in which your students solar cook beans in jars the original Oolog model?
No, it's not. It's a metal at a 45-degree angle with, I think, about almost 3/4 square meter glass area. So it's quite powerful, and it has a large reflector, but it's built entirely of metal. So it's getting up to range.
How many jars of beans can it hold?
Yeah, I'd say it can do 10 easily.
Louise and everybody else who's interested in seeing some of the other ovens that Ivan mentioned, his huge parabolic trough and the box oven that he's referring to, if you follow him on his Facebook page, you'll be able to see examples of him cooking in the various ovens.
Did you want to somebody pop that into the chat maybe? Or do we just search for his name?
I think you could just search Ivan Yaholnitsky.
His name. Okay.
And follow.
Sounds good. Did someone else have their hand up?
So this question is from Sailor Sheldon. How many students would you say have graduated from your program every year?
Close to 150 for the last 10 years.
It's incredible.
Great.
That's impressive.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had a question. Craig Berglund had messaged me. He wasn't able to join us today, but he sent some questions in. So Ivan, Craig wanted to know how many loaves of bread could you make on a full sunny day just using that one evacuated tube oven?
Could probably do, on a good day, you could probably do 10. Yeah, you could probably do 10.
And I have a question in addition to that is, are most of your materials other than the tubes locally available to you?
Yes, totally.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ivan, do any of your students want to say anything about their experience with solar cooking or producing them?
Thank you for the opportunity. What I can say is that this kind of the solar cookers have changed our lives, like locally, including in the country. We also use parabolic cookers to cook instead of using gases and spending a lot of money. So it really changes our lives totally.
That's great. Do you have your family members and friends who you show the technology to? Are they convinced of it too?
Yeah, totally. They were actually excited when I told them about them. And I promised them that I'm gonna do a box cooker for them soon as
That's great. Nana, do any of your students have any questions for Ivan's students?
Elinor, and then Dion, and then go, Elinor.
For the students, what's your favorite thing that you've cooked in the cooker?
They're asking your students, Ivan, what their favorite thing that they've cooked in the cooker. What do they enjoy cooking?
Okay. Diane?
Have you ever thought about mass producing like the solar cookers and then giving them to the community to like replace the expensive?
Let me say, let me just say something about that. I have a strong opinions about this. I think one of the reasons why solar cooking hasn't taken off as much as it could is because there's been this attitude that you use it simply to heat something up, that you throw a bunch of stuff in a pot and it gets hot, and then that's solar cooking. Whereas I really think you need to have a culinary focus where you produce very, very good food, which is what we do. I'm excellent food with the solar cooker into a kitchen and a garden and a pantry, and that you use it as a complement to that to produce really fine food, rather than say just.
That's a good point, Ivan. And I see that Celestino just posted in the chat about the Console Food Conference happening in May in southern France, where there is in fact a gourmet restaurant that cooks all of its food in Marseille, France, where the Console Food is happening. And the last Console Food Conference I attended in northern Spain, the food was just out of this world, and it was all cooked on solar cookers in probably the rainiest part of Spain, right? So it wasn't even sunny the whole time, but they managed to produce amazing food there. I noticed Ivan's audio was getting a little choppy, so I don't know if
It's disconnected.
Ivan, are you there?
We lost our data feed for a few minutes. I think this project, the Global Maker, we're moving in the right direction. Jennifer and Mary working with young people. It's a cultural shift. Cooking is a technology, it's a social technology. Takes a long time for people to change, but in these sun-drenched regions of the world, I think once cooking takes off, it'll become a lifestyle. I don't see any reason why it would not be just a common lifestyle, especially because it keeps your house cool, and it also keeps your house safe, that you don't have a stove on during the day to attend to. So that, to me, those are just enormously attractive features of this technology. And it's something that people need to learn about. You know, it requires innovation, experiments, and people to have social networks where they share this enthusiasm and practice, and so on.
Riyadh, we have another question from the chat. Ivan, what was the biggest unforeseen challenge to overcome in the design of the solar cooker? And that's from Stefan Adcock.
Well, that's strictly because of the situation here that we have with importing goods. It's a nightmare. Bringing in containers of goods from China for us is we're dealing with borders and tax agencies and a lot of bureaucratic red tape and whatnot, which is unnecessarily cumbersome. But anyway, that was probably the biggest issue.
Okay, and then no, I didn't. I see. Okay. Is there a difference in the recipes? So to cook bread in the solar cooker, do you use less water, more yeast? How do you have to adjust the actual recipe? That's from Juana Hernandez in Mexico.
I would say there's no difference whatsoever. We're always, or myself personally, I'm always pushing the envelope. I'm watching French pastry chefs on Instagram, and we've been able to do beautiful croissants filled with French pastry cream recently, and we do a gourmet lasagna. One of my favorite things to solar cook is cabbage rolls. You know, put them in early in the morning, leave them for the whole day. That's really the best food in the world.
Yeah, every time I see you put a picture of those stuffed cabbage up, it makes my mouth water. That's my heritage food.
Best part about solar cooking.
Yeah, and then Louise Meyer had another question she put in the chat. She's commenting about how some of the cookers are only big enough to cook for one meal, sometimes 1 or 2 people. She says, what solar cooker could cook for a family of 10 or 15 people?
You just scale up the size of the box cooker, you know, just a bigger glass. You saw one picture of this large jumbo village type cooker that we have in Mahalisuk. That's an enormously powerful machine. It can cook a lot of food. And in fact, just the little box cookers that we make, I often roast a turkey at Christmas with it, you know, on a good day. So really they have good capacity.
All right, there's also a question, how can I access the recording? And I think that as long as we have your email, we will send that out to everyone who has signed up for this Zoom event. If
you registered, you will get the recording link.
Okay, and then this is from Paul Hedrick on the chat. Ivan, in the past, you used a large trough cooker, the T188, with a metal tube for baking bread. Do you still use it? And does it cook as well as the evacuated tube cooker?
Yeah, it's still being used. Both are being used every day. We've been in a streak of drought here. We've had 40, 50, 60 days of clear skies. It's faster. It's much faster. Double, almost triple the speed.
And Ivan, that large one has quite a capacity. And I think you told me at one time that oven is quite old. And I know some people are concerned that there's a short lifespan for solar cookers, but could you talk about the lifespan of the cookers that you build? Because they're quite industrial looking.
Well, the box cookers will literally last forever. You know, the anodized aluminum that we get now, Myro Sun and other proprietary products, they come with a 20, 30-year lifetime surface guarantee. So they've got good durability before you see any level of degradation.
Do you have to change the reflective surface every so often on any of those, or polish, or how do you keep the surface highly reflective?
We clean them, and we've had some hail damage over the years because the anodized aluminum is a little bit soft. While we do furl the cookers, they have had some damage from a hailstorm.
Riyadh, I'm scrolling through to look for any questions that I might have missed. And some of these have already been addressed. Anna Morcacho from Sac City says she'd like to cook lasagna and wants to know if she could build a bigger tube to cook, for example. And I don't know if that's an appropriate style of oven, Ivan, for lasagna, or do you recommend the box? What would you say about that?
That's a good question. I make a little quick lasagna hack in this evacuated tube cooker using instant noodles. And it works perfectly well. You know, it just takes me a couple of minutes to put it together, throw it in, and an hour and a half later, it's done.
I believe Segi is raising their hand.
Hello, Ivan. Thank you. Ivan, I think this question has been asked in a different way. On your big trough cookers where you bake bread, you use a metal tube, which is highly absorbent. Due to the difficulty of getting hold of the evacuated tubes, what would the effect be of using a metal tube inside your new smaller cooker with the glass front? Would it achieve, obviously not as good results as the evacuated tube, but fairly comparable results?
Maybe. I mean, that's an issue that the students like Nana could address. You've got to have the heat transfer, and it's not only the heat, but a problem with solar cooking is to get the heat in the right place in the oven. Like in a lot of cookers, you get heat concentrated on the top, not necessarily on the bottom where it needs to get to the food. So it's a kind of a heat distribution energy problem, physics problem that somebody needs to think about and analyze and experiment and innovate with. But really, there's no limit to how much energy you can pump into a space. You just make things bigger. It's something worth doing.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Stacy Navarro Cortez. Stacy says, can you explain what an evacuated tube is and why it's crucial to the solar cooker? And also, can it be made at any size?
Well, it's got it stops any kind of advective heat loss between the two layers of glass because it's been evacuated. So there's a vacuum. So the heat goes in, it can come out through radiation, but it can't come out through advection, through any type of air movements. Sometimes the glass tubes, the seals fail. So that means there's no longer a vacuum, and you can clearly see a drop in the performance of that oven.
Okay,
They still work, but they don't work as well.
Okay, and Celestino has a good suggestion. He is asking if we could have a parallel event to Console 2025, organized at Lesotho or any other place where there's a group of people interested on this passionate way of cooking. Celestino, I don't know if you want to actually talk about that for a minute, because I know we did that with a group from India last year. They had kind of like a watch party. So, Celestino.
Thank you, Mary. Are you with me? Before talking about that, and as a complement to the answer of Ivan about that question, when we need to cook for a big number of people, 30, 40, obviously we can have a single big cooker. But according to my experience, I think it will be also a good option to have 3 or 4 small cookers because cooking at the same time. Because in one cooker you can cook potatoes, in the other cooker you can cook rice, in the other cooker you can cook the meat or the fish. So I think it is also a good option, because if you have a big cooker, a single one, and a big cooking vessel of 20 liters or 30 liters, it will be difficulty to manage this big pot. So I think it will be a good option to use more than one cooker. Regarding the Console Food Conference, it's a great pleasure to find in this meeting a lot of friends around the world here, from India, from Lesotho, from USA, etc., etc. It will be a good idea to repeat the way we run the conference last time. So I am pushing you because I know the difficulties of traveling, the cost, this and that. Obviously, I would like to meet you in Marseille, in France, but I think it will be also a good option to organize parallel events in different parts of the world. For example, we can organize one in Lesotho, another in Mexico with Juanita is here also, another in New Delhi with Dori Pateria that is also here, and in other parts. So if you want to coordinate one of these parallel events in your region, you just contact me, then we try to do our best. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely interested.
Ivan, what are your other alternate sources that you would still consider as clean cooking options?
Well, we have biogas. My coffee every day is made with biogas. And also we've got induction stoves, which I like the technology. We can run them easily with small PV inverters, 3 kilowatt, 5, 10 kilowatt inverters, which are coming commonplace around the world. PV panels, as you know, are so inexpensive now. We can use induction stoves for really, indoor cooking. And they have their place.
There was a question about whether it's possible to make an evacuated tube. As far as I know, no, right? These are sourced just from producers in China. But along in the spirit of that question, just want to remind people there's so many different technologies of solar cooking, and different kinds of solar cooking, and we hope to cover them all in this series of Global Makers. So if you're interested, just stay connected and you'll find a design that is easy to make for you and works for your climate.
One other thing, Riyadh, I know Paul Hedrick was on here from SCI. I don't know if he's still here, but if you go to the SCI wiki, there are patterns and explanations and links that are provided so that anyone who's interested in learning about this can self-teach.
He is still in the meeting.
I'll just say make a short comment. Yes, I've enjoyed watching the video, and I wanted to just add, I know Mary just touched on it, but an easy way to go to the SCI wiki is just solarcooking.org is an easy way to get to the wiki.
And Riyadh, I wanted to tell you that I wouldn't mind making another video, but make it about what I call the purple fig solar cooker, the one made out of paper and foil and glue, and it would be affordable all over. It would take me a little while to get it together, but if that would be an interesting thing for the group, I could add that.
That sounds great. Sounds like a valuable addition to the series. Thank you, Sharon.
Okay. Yeah, because that costs less than $5. So
yeah.
And then Riyadh, Grace, our partner in Kenya, is here, as well as Father Sospiter, who they headed up some great programs in Eldoret. So, but Grace, if you have anything to say, or just say hello and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, my solar sisters. And I would like to thank Ivan for the great presentation. My solar sisters and Riyadh for this preparation. It was really wonderful. I would also like to appreciate my team from Kenya, Father Sospita and Viola and Bruno for joining this event. I'm really excited and I'm proud of you guys. Father Sospita is a maker. He led our team in making the Highness solar cooker, and it was really wonderful. He's the one who made the what do you call, Father? The template for the cooker. I had some questions, but it's like we had the same mind with Riyadh. He asked most of the questions that I wanted to ask. And what I would like just to appreciate is that the way Ivan and the students are using the locally available materials to make the evacuated cube cooker. I also have one, and I've not actually used it. I think now that I have seen this one, I think I'll think about making mine and using putting it in a box like this one of the design of Ivan. I appreciate my daughter Viola for attending. She's interested. She has a lot of passion for solar cooking. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Grace, to you and all our guests from Kenya. It's really a pleasure to have you all. And of course, Grace was our first solar global maker. And Sharon is also one of our global makers. Mary, maybe we could mention some of the upcoming events. The next.
Okay. All right. So in the process of finishing up a global maker video for Matteo Muccioli from Italy. The challenge there is getting a good and accurate translation and doing editing with accuracy. So once we finish that, we'll schedule Matteo for, I'm sure it'll be a very lively presentation. And then also we have finished, and it's on our YouTube page, so you can go there and please subscribe so we can spread the word. But we finished the video for Didicus Odhiambo in Kenya, and he made the energy efficient stove. And it's just amazing to watch this thing come together from very basic materials. And it cuts down on the fuel that's used by 50%. So it's not solar, but we can't always rely on the sun on a day when there's no sunshine. You do still have to cook your food. And so this is an option that he provides for integrated solar or integrated cooking methods. And then we have others. Sam Odhiambo is going to do the conical cooker. So we have to get that started. We've got a lot on our plate. Got a lot of great makers out there. Sharon Cousins, I've had enough material from her to start a video. So if someone's interested, if you're a maker, please reach out to us. You know, it's a lot of work, you know, getting the raw video turned into us, and then we have to do the editing, but it's worth it. Like Ivan said, to just spread this information and give people an opportunity to watch a video and be able to, you know, pique their own maker interest in trying this technology. Thanks, Riyadh.
Thank you, Mary. And I see in the chat, Celestino has invited Dory from Gurugram, India to speak. We don't want to put her on the spot, but he says she's the youngest person here. So welcome, Dory. And if you want to say anything, we're open.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dory, and I got infected with the solar virus last February, I think, when Celestino sir was in India. He was organizing a solar cooking workshop in Vatsalya. And since then, I've been curious about solar cooking and different ways in which we could cook using the sun's solar energy. But it's difficult where I live to use the solar cooker every day because during the rainy season we have almost no sunlight for almost, I guess, 3 or 4 months. So, well, I'm still exploring this new field, and I'm really excited. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for joining us, Dory. Juan Bello put a question in the chat. Juan, do you want to speak it and maybe address it to, is it addressed to Ivan or to the group? Your mic is muted, Juan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you again. Last July, I was with a group of teachers from Spain and Turkey in Burundi to help teachers of vocational training in Burundi to design a specific course of vocational training about solar cooking, solar cookers manufacturing. And my question is if you have any sorry, my English is bad. if you have any advice to introduce the society, the Burundian society, into solar cooking.
Any ideas or thoughts or advice on how to introduce the idea, right? I guess it's about kind of acceptance of people.
Yeah, let me say something about that. I mean, it needs to be done professionally. As much as I love students, you cannot mass produce, a high quality consumer item using students' labor. It needs to be done with very good quality control, an excellent shop, and really artisans, very skilled artisans. Otherwise, the quality control is going to be not up to standard. That's my experience, and we've made that mistake ourselves.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to that? Grace, maybe, or Segi?
So we have some experience of this from a few years back. So Jane and I were working with an organization in Sri Lanka, and they made locally some box solar cookers with a single reflector. And we spent a few weeks traveling to schools, community organizations, showing them how to cook a basic meal with basic meal of rice and lentils, just as a demonstration. There was a lot of interest. People were impressed, but I can sympathize with Juan because it was extremely difficult to get them to adopt it afterwards. People in Sri Lanka like to cook with fire because there's a lot of food is fried or cooked at higher temperatures, and firewood still is easily accessible, although it's not good for the environment and long term it's going to give problems. But people hadn't reached crunch point where they were desperate to find alternative ways of cooking. So Juan, I haven't got a solution for you other than sympathize and say this is an extremely difficult. I understand what Ivan is saying about professionally made cookers, but instilling cultural change is very, very difficult.
I know, I know. It's very difficult. It's very different the system of cooking with charcoal or with wood, and everybody asks about how I can cook beans, how I can cook rice in my traditional culture, and is the big problem was change the minds and change the time of the cooking process.
Maybe we have some answers, but we're left with questions, which is always the case, right? So we'll explore these questions more in future sessions, and we'll do our best in our partnership, but we know that there are other initiatives going on, and we'll also continue to follow those. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. It's great to see you all, and it's great to have this feeling of community and grapple these questions together.
Thanks, Riyadh, for being such a eloquent host. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the glitches from our end.
No, not at all, Ivan. Thank you, especially to you and your students. You really made a great program today for us. So thank you so much. And I know